So, in the past, if you had one person, then you have something like an 85% likelihood that you will do the implementation yourself. As you have more people, the percentage of implementations that are done solely by employees drop, but even at the lowest point, they only get down to a little over 40%, somewhere around there. Then that horrible pink-colored bar is the one that was mostly employees with some outside help. So if you add together the green employee-only bar and the mostly employee bar, you'll notice that 100% of under 5 people, 2 to 5 or 1 person, was done mostly on the inside or entirely on the inside. Then you look at outside help. It's not until you get to 6 to 15, 15 to 50, or 50 plus that you start to see some kind of significant numbers up in there in the past implementations. When you look at present implementations, it looks to me as though those numbers, they pretty much match. They're not, they're not exactly the same, but they kind of match up. You see the same general trend, not a whole lot of outside resources happening. But as you get larger, the 50 plus do tend to have quite a few outside resources involved. Then you look at the future implementers. So 50% of the future implementers think that it will be something other than just employees. And when you look at the other 2 bars, past and present, one-person implementations, the odds that they're going to get outside help are, looks like slim and none. So I don't know where that 10 to 15% came from that thought they were going to have somebody on the outside just do their implementation for them, but we kind of enjoyed that one. Now, if you look at the 50 plus, in the 50 plus category, over 20% think, oh, it'll be all employees, but the reality, past and present, is that it was somewhere between 35 and 50% that was entirely employee done, even at the 50 plus people. So it looks to me as though the future implementers are being pretty optimistic about the idea of being able to bring in outside resources. I am, of course, entirely for the concept of bringing in outside resources, but I don't think the statistics bear out what we're seeing here on the future implementation side. We asked about authoring tools. So we went in and said, what authoring tools are you using? And we gave them a bunch of different choices and a list of stuff and said, here, choose some stuff. The winners and people did have the option of writing in their own personal favorite tools. The clear winners were Arbortext, Structured FrameMaker, and XMetal. That was not a surprise. Those are typically the 3 that are most commonly used, and so we did expect to see those do well. What we did not expect was to see Oxygen, which did quite well as an authoring tool, and we were even more surprised to see Madcap Flare, because Flare, by any reasonable definition, is not a structured authoring tool. It does not allow you to define and programmatically enforce a structured authoring environment. The Flare users, however, appear to think that it can or will. We had numerous comments along the lines of, I'm going to wait until Flare has structured authoring and then I'm going to go to structure. So it's really quite interesting. I've been in this business for quite a long time, and 10 years ago, the types of responses we're getting for Flare are the kinds of responses we were seeing 10 years ago for FrameMaker. Give me FrameMaker or give me death. I will not use anything other than FrameMaker. You'll have to pry it away from me, those kinds of responses. That passion has apparently now been transferred to Flare. That's where we see those kinds of responses. So we looked at market share. Now, we have to be very, very careful with these numbers because we had, as I said, 600 respondents. Each one of those respondents represents one implementation, one company, one project. But a given project or a given implementation could be 1 or 2 or 15 or 500 seats, 500 licenses. So we calculated market share both ways to see what we would get. All right. So market share, now this is current market share, so these are people who have implemented. When we asked about market share, what we got was that by implementation, so for every 100 responses, we got 10 that said Arbortext, 18 that said Oxygen, 35 that said Structured FrameMaker, and 37 that said XMetal. So what tool are you using in your environment? Answer one of these. So XMetal won by implementation. Then we recalculated by seat. Now, because we gave people the option of telling us how many people were in their implementation, we were able to calculate this, but they had ranges. So they could say we have 2 to 5 people, or we have 6 to 15, or we have a range. So when we calculate the seats, we're going to introduce quite a bit of error here because we're averaging out the number of seats. However, what's pretty clear is that Arbortext has, on average, a higher number of seats than the average response that we got because its market share went up about 5%. Oxygen was about average. Structured FrameMaker dropped a bunch. And XMetal actually went up. So our market share numbers tell us that XMetal is currently the leading XML authoring tool, certainly among the respondents that we got. The other thing it tells us is that Structured FrameMaker is in a lot of organizations, but those organizations have a below average number of seats. So basically, onesie, twosie kinds of implementations, not 50 people or 100 people. Arbortext is overrepresented in the larger implementations and thus has a larger market share by seat than it does by implementation. We were pretty surprised, though, at how low the Arbortext number was. We were pretty surprised at how high the Oxygen number was, so I suppose it's a game of expectations. We also found that Oxygen, this is overall by implementation. When we filtered out DITA and looked at who is using DITA and what tools are they using, Oxygen did even better than the numbers we have here. So Oxygen would definitely be one to take a look at. And again, Flare got about, among future implementers, Flare got about 7 to 10% that said we are going to implement with Flare. Flare, again, not a structured authoring tool at this point, but they have announced that they're headed in that direction, and they appear to have a pretty significant number of people that are willing to wait for them. We spent actually quite a lot of time asking about change management. We had several change management factors, things like staff will, are you concerned about your staff adjusting? A lot, a little, not really. We asked about hostility towards, or outright hostility. Has your staff exhibited outright hostility towards this change? We asked about training and various other things along these lines. We had about 5 different factors that we asked about to try to measure change resistance, including turnover, staff turnover. So, of the non-implementers, over 30% said our staff will not adjust, and that is why we are not implementing. Of the past implementers, the people who have already done this, not quite 30% said we had some or a lot of turnover. So I think it's fair to say that the non-implementers that said, 30% said we are concerned, and about 30% of the people that did actually move forward with implementation did have turnover, which can be a marker for people refusing to adjust. However, interestingly, the current implementers, the number was more like 20%. So there's a pretty significant drop among current implementers in terms of the amount of turnover. It is not clear exactly what this means. It is possible that turnover is decreasing. It is possible that turnover will end up being around 30%, but that they just hadn't left yet. They won't leave until this thing is better or is done. It's possible that the turnover is muted by the fact that right now the economy is so bad. So there are a lot of questions there that we were not able to answer, but it is fair to say that 20 to 30% is kind of the number that we're looking at. In 20 to 30% of implementations, you have some or a lot of turnover. That said, you can kind of turn that around.